This is Glenn Thrush back at Politico World Headquarters. That was quite a conclusion by President Obama. There was a real kind of trash-talking basketball moment there towards the end there. When the president said, "I am no longer on the ballot," there was apparently some cheering on the Republican, perhaps the only cheering of the evening from the Republican side. And then Obama said, "I know because I won both elections that I was in." Mm-hmm. Carrie, Budoff, Brown, Josh Gerstein. Carrie, what did you think of that?
Well, I think that remark, which was not in the prepared text,
Definitely not.
obviously, really sort of summed up, I think, this speech in general, which is, I'm the president, I know what my base is, I know what I'm here to do, and I'm going to keep pushing it despite the last election, which he lost. The Senate lost control of the Senate. Quite a difficult election year for him, and the speech today, I feel like, reflected that very little.
President Obama just then exchanging kind of what appeared to be kind of you to man finger pointing with Eric Holder, and he walked very quickly past his outgoing Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel. Josh Gerstein, it was the last 10 minutes of the speech was really interesting. He evoked his famous 2004 speech calling for bipartisanship. But the rest of the speech didn't really match the last 10 minutes, did it?
No, I mean, it was pretty combative up till that point, and we know that especially the economic items that he laid out in the speech are really non-starters, and the White House has to really know that in dealing with the Hill. So it's interesting when he talks about extending the olive branches. I do feel like we've heard that from him in many prior speeches. There's some kind of bring us all together moment towards the end. But then, we see that the opportunity for that seems even more limited now than it was in any prior State of the Union address that he gave, both because the Congress is in Republican hands uniformly now, but also, as Carrie was saying, because of, I think it's not only rhetoric, he really doesn't believe this last election was a verdict on how the American people see him. And he may be right about that. If you look at some of the poll numbers and the economic numbers that we've seen in the last 2 months, the disconnect between the results of the last election and Americans now saying they think that the country's, moving in a better direction than it ever has been before is pretty remarkable.
It is amazing how quickly it's bounced back. And when you sort of look, I was struck by the Washington Post poll a couple of days ago that showed congressional Republicans underwater by double digits and congressional Democrats being only slightly underwater, a complete reversal of what we had last time. But the point that you made about his combativeness, in covering him in the 2012 campaign, I alluded earlier to the infamous debate in Denver. This is a guy who really doesn't kind of respond in a passionate way unless his back is against the wall. The fact that he's running out of road here, the fact that he just was handed this defeat at the polls really seems to have energized him. Carrie, you've watched a lot of these. How would you compare his sort of passion and energy level with even last year's?
I mean, he looked looser to me, a little bit more. I got this kind of thing where he doesn't have to worry so much about. He's not as constrained by the politics around him, having to carry another midterm where he never has done well, and so you have this sort of sense that he's saying kind of, YOLO, right. I won, you didn't. Great
moment, sorry to interrupt, but a great moment on the floor just then. Virginia Fox, the very, very conservative congresswoman from North Carolina, stopped the president to get an autograph.
Yeah, you gotta love those moments on the floor where they're sitting there rolling their eyes at the rhetoric, obviously. I think Republicans have heard this whole thing about, I want to work with you, I want to take your ideas. He says that practically about every initiative he takes up, and yet, Republicans feel like it's completely empty rhetoric. And then it's funny how you see people ask for autographs. The bottom line, he's still president of the United States, and people still.
Well, there also seems to be, Josh. There also seems to be considerably less vitriol. And the Republicans, Mitch McConnell, the new Senate Majority Leader, gave an interview with the Washington Post a couple of weeks ago, in which he said his goal was to not be scary. The Republicans really seem to be on pretty good behavior here, didn't they?
They did seem to be that way, and it does. There was not a lot of talk, it seems. For a party that's suing him to block his immigration moves or his other executive actions, you didn't have that same sense of confrontation. Although some of John Boehner's facial expressions as the speech went on, and particular notes. He seemed to wince or look down at his shoes or what have you.
There was, according to Twitter, and I kind of missed it, but there was apparently a fairly long nose blowing episode that occurred in the middle. Not a lot of crazy facial expressions from Joe Biden. In general, I think everyone in the chamber seemed a little more restrained. I thought what was interesting is we have the largest Republican majority in the House since 1928. Yet the Democrats seem to be making most of the noise, didn't they, Carrie?
Yeah. We had by Mark Knoller, our CBS radio correspondent, the great keeper of all facts, White House and presidential, anything the president does. By his count, the speech was 59 minutes and 56 seconds, and there were 87 applause lines. I don't know how that compares.
How does that compare?
Historically, I think that's the question. But yes, you're right. I don't think we saw too much by way of Republicans jumping up on their feet. I think the one time we did see it was when Alan Gross, a pretty remarkable moment with Alan Gross standing up and saying thank you, his teeth still, the same way it was when he was rescued. And you saw Republicans respond to that. It would be hard not to.
It seemed to me, Glenn, like maybe both sides trying to treat the other side as somewhat irrelevant. The real question here is not whether the president's laying out as the various legislative moves that he wants to make, as Carrie and others have reported on. It seems to me, to the extent he's going to be able to push his agenda forward, it's going to be by keeping going in this area of executive action. And the Republicans are going to move forward probably on a bunch of things that he doesn't care for. And so it seemed to some extent the two sides talking past each other. To provide a little bit of context, as I was saying before about the speech length, it seems to fall sort of right in the middle historically for him. You have his longest speech was in 2010, an hour and 9 minutes. There you go. And this clocks in roughly at 2013 when he spoke for 59 minutes. About that middle mark where sometimes you had Bill Clinton speak for 90 minutes back in the day.
I have to say, it didn't, I've listened to a lot of his speeches and I felt like going out waxing my car. This one did not drag. This was, I have to say, this was a more, his speechwriter was described as Hemingway, I would say, not so much in terms of brevity, but it did zip along pretty well, didn't it?
Like I said, I think the fact that his delivery, that he seemed a little bit looser, I think we were all kind of looking, for those of us who follow the president closely, we're kind of looking for those cues of him saying things like he did at the end.